Not all the time, though. And you could forgive them the odd roll in the snow. But not so unexpected to Manfred. He did a rather similar thing 2 years previously before the rally had even started. Anyway, best forget that one, Manfred. But what there is has an uncanny ability to cause trouble, particularly for Francois Delacour. This is 2001. A very heavy impact, and you would think Delacour would be wary of those Aussie trees next time around. But this is 2002, again a very high-speed section of road. Again, a huge impact, so much so the engine is actually separated from the car. It's marked the end of a long relationship with co-driver Daniel Grateloop and the beginning of the end of Francois' career. Even triple world champion Sébastien Loeb has struck it unlucky with the Aussie trees. This unusual mistake from the world champion is his one and only big crash in the Citroën Zara. And Nicky should know he partnered 1995 world champion Colin McRae for 6 years, a man formerly nicknamed Colin McCrash, and with good reason.
And 6 left into turn hairpin left.
There was wheels off, bumpers off, everything off the car.
After the break, we'll be finding out how young drivers develop the nerves of steel. Welcome back to WRC Crash. Before the break, we asked you what happened next. Here's Luís Aitken-Walker in Portugal 1990. On slippery, wet tarmac, the car leaves the road and plunges down 50 metres into a lake, sinking without a trace. Spectators and the amateur cameraman filming it held their breath. Finally, Aitken-Walker and her co-driver Tina Turner emerged from the lake. To Solberg here, trying to branch out into the world of motorsport. Very few non-Scandinavians have ever won in what is often called the spiritual home of rallying, and even the local heroes can come unstuck. Harry Rovanperä, for example, knows a lot about the Finnish trees, so you'd think he'd know to stay as far away from them as possible. And despite the trees, the Finnish rally demands those high speeds, no room for error here. When world rally cars hit trees, they tend to have the same effect the world over, and Germany is no exception. Gilles Panizzi found this out in 2004. Just watch his expression now as a copse of trees gets closer and closer. There was nothing he could do to slow that car down on the wet grass. Of course, it isn't only Mother Nature who has it in for the rally drivers. Man-made obstacles also crop up, and amongst these, telegraph poles seem to be a favourite.
Pour droite 60, François. No.
Francois Duval actually demolishing that concrete telegraph pole. Fortunately, his car took the brunt of this accident. Next telegraph pole, and this time a wooden one. Roman Cresta, competing in Monte Carlo, will thank all his lucky stars that that telegraph pole was there. It stops him falling down a very steep cliff. Some man-made obstacles, however, are put there for safety reasons, Armco's for example. But in the WRC, they've caused their own fair share of problems. That Armco completely demolishing Armin Kramer's Ford Focus. Carlos Sainz had a similar high-speed misadventure in his Focus a few years earlier. A head-on smash with an Armco creates a big dent in you. When you learn to drive, one of the wise comments experienced drivers will tell you is that the most dangerous things on the road are other drivers. There's some truth in that in the WRC too. Here's Harry Rovanperä flat out on the Swedish snow. But the last thing he expected to see in the middle of the stage was this. And when it comes to crashes, he doesn't let a little scrape get him down. Or even a little bang. Or even a great big bang. This is Corsica 2003 and the shakedown practice stage before the rally has even begun.
The car was very, very heavily damaged. Rise that pace and then he'll up the pace a little bit and then maybe make the odd mistake.
Team managers are the guys that hire and fire as well as nurture their drivers. They know more than most that crashing is part of the learning experience.
You can have two approaches. You can send them out and say, listen, they seem to have a period of accidents and they're just finding exactly where the pace is and getting experience in different conditions. You noticed last year quite a few times with Chris, even though it was a lot of work to put him back in Super Rally, it's important to get him back in the seat as soon as possible and get him to do some mileage.
Sebastian Loeb's teammate is another example. Danny Sordo started the 2006 season making headlines. The 22-year-old amazed the doubters with some great performances. Then he had his first taste of the fast gravel of Finland. And this happened. A big smash by...
No, why was happening exactly. It's 1 second, but it's very, very long. And
after a lackluster performance in Japan, Sordo seemed to be struggling to get back his form in Cyprus. He continued after this small roll, but then on the Spectator Super Special in Limassol, these are normal roads and the most bizarre thing happened.
It's still a mystery for us.
A team manager's job is to see talent and also to know the timescale the driver needs to harness his skills. But their patience and pocket only last so long.
Supervision, we're off the side of the road. There's not much damage, but I don't think it's much.
And some drivers struggle more than others. Just ask Francois Duval. The previous teammate to the all-dominant world champion Sebastian Loeb. The pressure was really on the then 24-year-old. As you saw earlier in the show, the first rally for his new team, Monte Carlo, and Francois has a penchant for telegraph poles. For starters, that is a pretty significant impact. And his season didn't get any better. For his main course, the fast gravel of Sardinia. And what about this for a fiery dessert? One man who had no hesitation in showing that he'd lost faith was co-driver Stefan Prevost, who walked away from Duval and the WRC. Citroën also started to question the young man out of the ditch. The last thing Solar expected was this. Fellow competitor Niall McShay goes off in exactly the same place, right on top of him. Who would have thought it? But you'd be surprised what you actually have to do to send one of these cars to the rally scrap heap. When you consider that wrecks which you or I would pay to have towed away in the world of rallying, these demolished cars can be rebuilt and back on the stages on the very next event. But how badly damaged exactly? Can you tell the difference? Are these crashes wrecks or rebuilds? We'll start you off gently with Peter Solberg at the Shakedown practice session in Germany 2006. But is that a wreck or a rebuild? Okay, now for something a little harder. How about this one? Richard Burns in Finland 2000, and some of those hard finished trees we talked about earlier.
100.
Very shaken driver and co-driver, and a bit of a shambles of a Subaru.
Robert, okay?
Now that is definitely a wreck, and is just one of a handful of cars that Subaru have scrapped, but you can see why. Cosmetic. In fact, Danny Sola went on to crash the very same car just 2 outings later on his home event in Spain.
See? No! 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 No!
Even now, 2 years later, the car lives on, rallying in Ireland. Another Ford Focus, this is Marco Martin in Corsica 2003, and a rather bizarre moment.
70 crash, 0.34 minus left battery. No, Marco.
But yet again, despite a trip off a cliffside, this car was resurrected. A test.
Tightens the 6 minus over crest. And long left, tightens the 5. Opens the 6 over crest. Okay, you're right.
Again, that's one of those hard Finland trees we talked about earlier in the show, and that car is destined for the scrap heap.
He wanted to go there. Every year he goes a little bit there, and it's on 2 wheels, but this year he went a little bit more, and round we went.
Marcus, though, could have been forgiven for this one, as he wasn't the only driver caught out at this corner.
No chance to steer into the corner. We lost the rear and a big sideways and then off the road.
But what happened next? Manfred's throttle jams open and the Austrian driver drives straight on off the side of the road.